Holaygav, a village bathed in sunshine, its beauty unmatched. Laughter echoed through the air, carried on the gentle breeze. Children chased each other through the huts, their joyous screams a melody to the ears. The sun, a benevolent god, kissed the villagers' faces, painting them with a warm, healthy glow. Life was simple, yet fulfilling. Days were spent tending to the land, nurturing crops that would sustain them. Evenings were for storytelling, the elders weaving tales of their ancestors under a blanket of stars. Peace reigned supreme in Holaygav, a paradise untouched by the troubles of the outside world. The village was a tapestry woven with the threads of tradition and harmony. Each day mirrored the last, predictable and comforting. The villagers lived in harmony with nature, their lives dictated by the rhythm of the seasons. But even in paradise, shadows lurk. Unbeknownst to the villagers, a storm was brewing on the horizon, a tempest that would shatter their peaceful existence and change Holaygav forever. The wind, once a gentle caress, turned into an angry roar. It howled through the village, whipping up the dust and sending leaves swirling through the air. The once clear sky darkened, swallowed by an ominous wall of black clouds. Birds, sensing the impending danger, took flight, their frantic cries a warning lost in the wind's fury. The villagers, caught unawares, looked up at the sky, their faces etched with concern. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of approaching rain. Then the first drops of rain fell, heavy and cold, like icy needles piercing the skin. The wind intensified, transforming the gentle rain into a raging torrent. Huts creaked and groaned under the onslaught, their thatched roofs threatening to give way. Panic gripped the village. The storm, unlike anything they had witnessed before, descended upon them with a vengeance. Their peaceful world was unraveling, ripped apart by the fury of nature. Frantic shouts filled the air as villagers scrambled for shelter. Parents shepherded their children towards the sturdiest buildings, their eyes wide with fear. The elderly, their frail bodies buffeted by the wind, were helped along by younger villagers. The flimsy wooden huts, no match for the storm's wrath, began to collapse. The sound of splintering wood mingled with the roar of the wind and the screams of the villagers. Possessions, once treasured, were scattered by the wind, lost to the elements. Inside the few remaining intact structures, huddled figures sought solace from the storm's fury. The air was thick with fear and the smell of damp earth. As the storm raged outside, stripping away their world piece by piece, the villagers clung to each other, their prayers for deliverance echoing in the darkness. They could only wait and hope that they would survive the night. Huddled together in the darkness, illuminated only by flickering oil lamps, the villagers of Holaygav clung to each other, their hearts pounding in unison with the relentless fury of the storm outside. The air was thick with the scent of fear, mingling with the earthy aroma of wet soil that had seeped in through the cracks in the walls. Their prayers, whispered at first, grew louder, a desperate chorus rising above the howling wind. They called out to their ancestors, their voices trembling, begging for protection from this unseen force that threatened to tear their world apart.
Great Spirit, spare us! We have lived in harmony with the land, honoring your ways, implored the village elder, his voice hoarse with fear. Forgive our transgressions and guide us through this darkness.
Children, their eyes wide with terror, clung to their mothers, their small bodies trembling uncontrollably. The storm raged on, relentless and unforgiving, as if mocking their pleas for mercy. Section 2. The earth trembles. Just when the villagers thought the storm couldn't possibly grow any worse, the very earth beneath them began to tremble. It started as a low rumble, deep in the bowels of the earth, and quickly escalated into a violent tremor that shook the very foundations of their shelter. The oil lamps swayed precariously, casting eerie shadows that danced across the terrified faces of the villagers. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the walls groaned under the strain, threatening to cave in and bury them alive. A collective gasp arose from the villagers as the tremors intensified. Their fragile world, already battered by wind and rain, seemed on the verge of complete collapse. Never in their history had they experienced such raw power, such untamed fury from the elements. "The gods are angry with us," cried a voice from the darkness, laced with panic. The elder, struggling to maintain his composure, raised his voice above the chaos, attempting to soothe their fears and remind them of their strength. Section 3. A Glimmer of Hope. As quickly as it began, the violent shaking subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence that was almost more unnerving than the raging storm outside. The villagers, still huddled together, held their breaths, listening intently for any sign that the nightmare was truly over. Slowly, cautiously, they began to stir. A few brave souls ventured out of the shelter, their eyes squinting against the dim light of dawn. The storm had passed, leaving behind a trail of devastation that was both shocking and heartbreaking. Huts lay in ruins, their thatched roofs ripped away, their walls crumbled into piles of debris. The once lush fields, their crops ready for harvest, were now flooded and barren. Everywhere they looked, they saw the remnants of their lives scattered and broken. Yet amidst the devastation, there was a glimmer of hope. The sun, peeking through the receding storm clouds, cast a warm glow over the ravaged village. It was a sign, they believed, that they had survived the wrath of the storm and that a new day had dawned. Section 1. Picking up the pieces. The storm had passed, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The villagers of Holaygav emerged from their shelters, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and despair. The once familiar landscape was now alien, scarred by the storm's fury. The air, thick with the smell of damp earth and the remnants of the storm, was punctuated by the sound of sobbing. Families, reunited amidst the wreckage, clung to each other, their tears a testament to the terror they had endured. The task ahead seemed insurmountable. Huts lay in ruins, their contents scattered far and wide. The fields, once their lifeline, were now a sea of mud. The storm had stripped them bare, leaving behind only the raw materials of survival. Yet even in the face of such devastation, the spirit of Holaygav began to flicker back to life. With a shared determination, they began the arduous task of rebuilding their lives piece by shattered piece. Chief Malik, his face etched with concern, surveyed the scene. The storm, unlike anything he had witnessed in his lifetime, had tested the very limits of their resilience. As he directed the villagers in their efforts to clear the debris and account for the missing, a glint of something unusual caught his eye. "Chief Malik, what is that?" he muttered to himself, his gaze drawn to a clearing in the forest where a large metallic object lay half buried in the mud. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, its smooth, curved surface reflecting the sunlight in a way that seemed both mesmerizing and unsettling. He cautiously made his way towards the object, his hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial dagger, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension tugging at his gut. As he drew closer, he could see strange markings etched into its surface, symbols that held no meaning to his eyes. "Chief Malik, gather the elders. We must investigate this strange sight," he called out to his son Mikalo, who stood a safe distance away, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. News of the strange object spread through the village like wildfire, drawing the weary villagers towards the clearing. They had never seen anything like it before, its size and shape defying their understanding of the natural world. Whispers of ancient spirits and celestial beings filled the air, weaving a tapestry of fear and wonder. Some believed it to be a sign from the gods, a harbinger of either great fortune or impending doom. "Elder, it is a chariot from the heavens. The gods have descended upon us." "Villager, no, it is a demon's egg sent to punish us for our sins." "Chief Malik, His heart pounding in his chest, cautiously approached the strange object, his hand never straying far from the ceremonial dagger at his hip. The villagers, a mix of fear and curiosity etched on their faces, followed closely behind their whispers, hushed in the presence of the unknown. The object, now clearly visible in the morning light, was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Its smooth, metallic skin gleamed under the sun, reflecting their own awestruck faces back at them. Strange symbols, indecipherable to their eyes, were etched into its sides, adding to its mystique. Mikalo, it's like a giant bird, father, but made of metal, not feathers. Chief Myolik, indeed, my son, but what manner of bird is this that falls from the sky and bears the mark of no creature we know? The chief, his gaze sweeping over the object's immense size, nodded slowly. As they circled the downed object, their hands instinctively reaching out to touch its cold, unyielding surface, a gasp escaped from Mikalo's lips.
Father, look, it's broken open.
The chief, his heart quickening with a mixture of trepidation and excitement, joined his son at the opening. Peering inside, he could make out the shadowy forms of objects that were both alien and vaguely familiar.
What are those? Are they creatures?
I cannot tell, my son, but we must be cautious. Whatever brought this metal bird down from the heavens may still be lurking within.
Taking a deep breath, Chief Myolik turned to the villagers who had gathered behind him, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension.
Germano, go and find Bobias, the healer. Tell him to come quickly. We may have need of his skills.
Germano, his eyes wide with concern, nodded quickly and hurried off towards the village, his bare feet pounding on the damp earth. The chief, his gaze never leaving the strange opening in the metal bird, turned to his son.
Stay close, Mikalo, and be wary. We know not what dangers may lie within.
Together, father and son cautiously entered the belly of the metal bird. The air inside was stale and heavy, filled with the scent of something both unfamiliar and vaguely metallic. Strange symbols and glowing lights covered the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced as they moved deeper into the heart of the unknown.
Be careful, Father. This place, it feels wrong.
Their footsteps echoed in the strange, confined space as they made their way through a narrow passageway, their hearts pounding in their chests. The air grew colder, the scent of metal more pronounced. Finally, they reached a large, open chamber, bathed in the eerie glow of flickering lights. And there, slumped over a strange contraption covered in buttons and levers, sat a figure unlike any they had ever seen before. His skin was pale, almost translucent, his hair a strange golden color.
By the spirits, what is he?
Chief Myolik, his gaze fixed on the still figure, felt a chill run down his spine. The stranger's chest rose and fell with each shallow breath, a flicker of life amidst the wreckage. But there was something about him, something otherworldly, that filled the chief with a sense of unease.
I know not, my son, but I fear he is not of this world.
Bobias, the village healer, arrived at the crash site with his brow furrowed with concern. His weathered hands, accustomed to the gentle touch required for healing herbs and soothing poultices, trembled slightly as he beheld the strange metallic bird that lay broken amidst the familiar foliage. The villagers parted respectfully as he approached, their worried whispers dying down as he motioned for silence. Ducking his head under the twisted metal of the opening Mikalo had discovered, Bobias entered the belly of the strange beast. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of metal and something else, something alien and unsettling. He followed the chief and Mikalo through the narrow passageway, his heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and a healer's innate desire to mend what was broken. In the flickering light of the chamber, Bobias found the chief and Mikalo gazing down at the still figure strapped into the strange contraption. The man's breathing was shallow, his skin clammy and pale. Kneeling beside him, Bobias gently probed for injuries, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency despite his unfamiliarity with the being before him.
He is badly wounded, but he lives. We must take him back to the village, where I can tend to him properly.
The villagers, their initial fear giving way to concern, carefully extracted the unconscious stranger from the wreckage. They fashioned a makeshift stretcher from branches and woven mats, carrying him gently back to the village as if he were one of their own. Bobius, his brow creased in thought, walked beside the stretcher, his fingers resting lightly on the stranger's wrist, monitoring his faint pulse. Back in the village, Bobius directed the villagers to carry the stranger to his healing hut, a small, dome-shaped structure nestled amongst the fragrant herbs and brightly coloured flowers of his medicinal garden. Forbaya, Bobius's daughter, watched from a distance, her curiosity piqued by the unusual commotion. Forbaya had never been allowed inside her father's healing hut. It was a sacred space, reserved for those in need of healing and the spirits that guided her father's hand. But the allure of the unknown, of the strange being from the sky, proved too strong to resist. As the villagers dispersed, returning to their tasks of rebuilding their shattered lives, Forbia slipped unnoticed through the entrance of the healing hut, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Inside the dimly lit hut, the air thick with the scent of herbs and wood smoke, Forbaya found the stranger lying on a low bed made of woven reeds. His chest rose and fell rhythmically, his breathing deeper and more even than before. Bobius, his back to Forbaya, was preparing a poultice, his weathered hands moving with practiced grace. Forbaya, captivated by the sight of the stranger, crept closer. His skin, though still pale, was no longer as translucent as it had appeared in the wreckage. His hair, a shade of gold she had never seen before, lay in tangled waves against the woven mat. Timidly she reached out and touched his arm. His skin was warm beneath her fingers. As if startled by her touch, the stranger's eyes flickered open. They were a startling shade of green, a colour that did not exist in nature, as far as Forbia knew. For a moment they simply stared at each other, the girl and the stranger, their worlds colliding in the dimly lit hut. Then a weak smile spread across the stranger's face, and he spoke, his voice a raspy whisper in a language Forbia did not understand. The spirit man's voice, though weak, was filled with a melody Forbaya had never heard before. It was a song of a distant land, of a world beyond the storm clouds that rarely troubled their skies. Forbaya, her brow furrowed in concentration, tried to decipher the meaning behind the strange words, her own limited vocabulary feeling woefully inadequate.
Jace.
Seeing her confusion, the spirit man, Jace, paused, his brow furrowing as he struggled to bridge the chasm of language that separated them. He pointed to himself, his hand trembling slightly as he enunciated his name again.
Jace.
Then he pointed to Forbaya, his eyes questioning.
Forbaya.
Forbia, emboldened by his gentle demeanour, smiled shyly and pointed to herself.
Forbaya.
Jace's face lit up with understanding, a small victory in the face of their considerable challenge. For the next hour, they communicated through a combination of gestures, facial expressions, and the few words they were able to decipher from each other's languages. Forbia learned that Jace came from a place where giant metal birds soared through the sky, where people lived in structures that scraped the clouds, and where the night sky was not illuminated by the soft glow of the stars, but by 1,000 flickering lights. Jace, in turn, learned of Holaygav, of their simple way of life, their reverence for nature, and the storm that had brought him crashing into their midst. Jace, with his blonde hair and green eyes, looked to be around 30 years old. Forbaya, her heart pounding with excitement, raced through the village, her bare feet barely touching the ground as she searched for her father. She found him in the village square, his brow furrowed in concentration as he oversaw the villagers' efforts to rebuild their shattered homes.
Father, he spoke. I understood him. His name is Jace.
Bobius, initially skeptical, was soon convinced by his daughter's earnest pleas and the undeniable wonder in her eyes. Together, they hurried to the chief's hut, where they found Myolik deep in conversation with the village elders. The chief listened intently as Bobius and Forbia recounted their tale, his weathered face betraying no emotion. When they were finished, a heavy silence descended upon the hut, broken only by the crackling of the fire that burned in the hearth.
This is a matter of great import. This, Jace, he is unlike any being we have ever encountered. We know not his intentions, nor the power he wields.
The elders, their faces etched with a mix of apprehension and curiosity, murmured their agreement. The arrival of the spirit man, coupled with the devastation wrought by the storm, had shaken their belief in the order of their world. They looked to their chief for guidance, for reassurance in a time of unprecedented uncertainty.
Some believe he is a demon, sent to punish us for our transgressions,
whispered one elder, his voice trembling with fear.
Others believe he is a god, come to test our faith.
We cannot know for sure.
We cannot know for sure, but we must proceed with caution. Until we understand the nature of his being and the purpose of his arrival, we must keep him isolated.
Chief Mayolik replied, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his advisors. The flickering flames of the hearth cast dancing shadows across the faces of the assembled villagers, their expressions a tapestry of unease and apprehension. The air hung heavy with the weight of Chief Mayolik's impending decision, a decision that would shape the fate of Holaygav and the strange being they called the Spirit Man. Days had turned into weeks since Jace's arrival, weeks punctuated by hushed whispers and furtive glances towards Babius's healing hut. The villagers went about the arduous task of rebuilding their lives, their movements subdued, their laughter laced with a newfound fragility. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered, amplified by the presence of the unknown in their midst. For Baya, her initial excitement tempered by the villagers' growing unease, found herself torn between her instinctive curiosity about Jace and the fear that clouded her father's normally gentle eyes. She would steal away to the healing hut whenever she could, drawn by Jace's gentle nature and the captivating tales of his world, a world so different from her own. Jace, his strength slowly returning under Babius's care, seemed to sense the villagers' apprehension. His attempts at communication, once filled with a vibrant energy, grew hesitant, his green eyes mirroring the uncertainty that had become a constant companion. As the days turned into weeks, a rift began to form within Holaygav, a division drawn along the lines of fear and curiosity. Some villagers, their hearts hardened by the storm's devastation and fueled by the whispers of ancient prophecies, saw Jace as a harbinger of ill fortune, a demon in disguise. They pointed to the strange markings on his metal bird, the unnatural hum that emanated from its shattered remains, and the inexplicable storm that coincided with his arrival. Their voices, laced with fear and suspicion, grew louder with each passing day, demanding Jace's banishment from their midst. Others, their hearts touched by Jace's vulnerability and Forbire's innocent conviction, saw him as a victim of circumstance, a stranger in need of their compassion. They spoke of his gentle nature, his obvious fear, and his earnest attempts to bridge the chasm of language and culture that separated them. They argued for patience and understanding, reminding their fellow villagers that hospitality was a sacred duty, even towards those who were different. Their pleas, however, were often drowned out by the rising tide of fear and suspicion. Chief Mayolik, his brow creased with the weight of the decision before him, listened intently as his advisors presented their arguments, their voices echoing the divisions that had fractured their once unified village. He watched as fear and suspicion warred with compassion and curiosity in their eyes, his own heart torn between the need to protect his people and the desire to honor their traditions of hospitality. He had spent countless nights seeking guidance from the spirits of his ancestors, their wisdom passed down through generations of storytelling and ritual. He had consulted the village elders, their knowledge rooted in the rhythms of the earth and the whispers of the wind, and he had watched Forbaya, her youthful innocence a stark contrast to the village's growing unease as she interacted with Jace, their laughter a fragile melody amidst the discord. The chief knew that fear, left unchecked, could poison the heart of Holaygav, eroding the bonds of community and trust that had sustained them for generations. But he also knew that caution, in the face of the unknown, was not a weakness, but a testament to the hard-won wisdom of their ancestors. Finally, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky with hues of hope and renewal, Chief Myolik rose to his feet, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his people. The time for deliberation was over. The time for decision had arrived. The villagers assembled in the center of Holaygav, their faces drawn and weary, their eyes fixed on Chief Myolik as he stood before them, his ceremonial staff held firmly in his hand. The air crackled with anticipation, the silence broken only by the chirping of birdsong, a fragile reminder of the beauty that remained amidst the wreckage.
My people, we have faced a time of great challenge, a test of our resilience and our spirit. The storm has passed, but it has left its mark upon us, forcing us to confront our fears and question our beliefs.
Chief Myolik's voice echoed across the village square, carrying the weight of his words.
The spirit man, Jace, is a stranger to our land, a traveler from a world beyond our understanding. He arrived in a manner both fearsome and wondrous, a reminder that there is much we do not know about the forces that shape our lives.
His gaze met Forbia's for a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement of the bond she had formed with Jace.
We cannot undo the past, but we can choose how we move forward. We can choose to meet fear with suspicion and mistrust, or we can choose to embrace the unknown with courage and compassion.
The villagers listened, their hearts heavy but hopeful as the dawn of a new day began to break over Holaygav.